Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Rose, and we are from LAL.
And you are watching G5CU
Radio.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Nicholas Murray. I am a musician, electronic music musician, composer, and I also am a sound designer. And I produce, record, and compose music with Rosina in a band called LAL. I'm also a solo artist under the name Mur, which I've been doing for about 4 or 5 years, but I've been doing LAL for 16 years.
And then prehistory.
Oh, right. Before that, I was making rap music with a group of producers called The Grassroots. Yes, and that was 1998. We made one record called Passage Through Time. And after that, we have not made a record since.
And I'm Rose. I'm the lead singer of LAL. But I'm kind of like, I do all kinds of things, mostly sing and songwrite. But I help produce shows from mostly independent shows, mostly music. Really try to support communities of color, politicized topics, or talk about political issues. Try to bring in art and social justice in different ways, and just try to create a good vibe. So we also run Unit 2, which is our home kind of art space, and we throw anything from burlesque to dance parties to workshops. And so our work is also around a lot of community work in Toronto.
So the first time, we used to work at a record store downtown, and there was a situation where Rosina would come to work with like her singing over top of like the Beatnuts. Like it was 1998, so it was like you would hear the Beatnuts rapping, and Rosina, check out my song, I sang over the Beatnuts, and they would be rapping. I would be like, well, you do realize there's somebody rapping right now, and then she'd be like, yeah, but and then I was like, and she would always be like, I need beats, you gotta give me beats, and like, and you make beats, you need to make me beats, and I was like, well, okay.
Because you never told me that he was like a producer of the history of Grassroots, so I had no clue. And then when he told me, I was like, no, you guys have been making music for a long time, and you make really good music. And when he told me, I was in shock. I was like, what? I was like, you make beats? And then I just was like, just harassed him.
Yeah.
And then he wouldn't give me any. So I got an ASR 10, and I started making my own. And I think then he was like, oh, she's got ASR 10. Like most of the time, they're like, oh, the girls just get the guys and they get beats. But I was smart. I bought a keyboard. Sampler keyboard. So they all came to my house and we'd make stuff, and then it just, I think after I bugged you enough, it just happened.
Well, it developed. I mean, it's like anything. When you start making something and then there's an actual outlet for it, it becomes, oh my gosh, now I'm on stage with my ASR 10.
Yeah, we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
And then all of a sudden it started to develop into a whole community just based, and we met people through it. And I think some of the, it was a beautiful thing.
But I think at the time too, it's like we put out a record that I think really at that time in 98 or 99, whatever, it registered, you know, like it was a new sound. It wasn't R&B, it wasn't hip hop, it wasn't electronic, it was kind of amalgamation of that. And I think that's what registered with people. And we worked at a record store, so we knew everybody. So we had that shit on sale for like 2 years or something.
Yeah, I think we were just like, it was just something that came about very naturally. And there was no real...
Yeah, we lived all in that neighborhood, all around, like mostly Sherbourne. What is it, Sherbourne Jarvis area?
Right.
And so a lot of corners. So the reason why it's called corners, because every corner was different. And we just kind of like, we were just watching walk around from work or around from parties, and you just saw so much happen.
I mean, for me, I think what really motivated me was the ability to perform, and like getting into performance and being asked to perform in specific venues and performing in other countries. I think for a long while that was my motivation to making music and making records, because I was never really about that before. I was totally about just producing, and I think Rose was was the only person that I performed with at this point. But I did do solo performance as well as my other solo thing, but in terms of that was the impetus for a lot of my creation in some ways with LAL. I think we've since gotten back to more kind of compositional place of like creating work that will speak to something. So that's kind of where we're at now.
And we went through, like, we started off as an electronic duo, And then we moved into working with musicians, which was amazing. Like all kinds of musicians, like from Ian D'Souza, Rakesh Tiwari, Santosh, who plays with like Chaos, or used to play with Kevin. So we've worked with tons of musicians, and now we're back to an electronic duo. So it was really interesting to go through 15 years of just being on this amazing journey. But finally, I think now we know what we're doing.
I don't think you ever know.
I didn't know. Yeah,
I don't
that's
think
true.
you don't really know. Nobody knows.
But we really didn't know what we were doing.
But I mean,
like we just
in a sense where you know what you want to come with, you know the vibes that you're trying to come with, but you don't really know how people are going to respond to it in terms
but
of.
I don't even think we knew that because, like, you're in Canada, you're being told, okay, well, you're Asian, he's black, you're supposed to be doing this kind of music. You're supposed to, and part of us wanted to do that, and we attempted to do some stuff, but then this idea that we can't just make music and it still be real and still be part of our cultural identities was a big thing.
And I think
we're like, well, why can't we just do music?
Like, and that story has never really been told from a Canadian perspective.
Yeah.
Like the diaspora, like the idea that I'm now living in this country from a different place and I'm telling a story that is real to the place that I'm living in. I don't think that story's been told on a really big scale. So
I think now that's what this record is about, all those experiences.
Yeah, I feel like
coming together.
For me, I think this record is really influenced by our time in other countries, specifically in across the pond there, and kind of developing those ideas and having a response to people over there and the culture around the seriousness in electronic music specifically. So there's a lot of techno-y, housey things in this new record.
So in Canada, I think there's a really good audience who really appreciates music in this country. I think the problem is the power systems that direct what gets played and what doesn't get played. It's those folks who I think are kind of stuck in one world or don't know. So most of the people we know, whether it's electronic or whether it's like pop or whatever, they have to get exposure somewhere else before they get love back here. We're kind of weird because we get lots of love locally and we play a lot, but people might not know or have our CD because we didn't sell it. But like, so we're weird in that way. So I think there's definitely, Toronto's a great place to make music and practice, but our learning, for me, what I've learned is send it abroad. Like, we've gotten more love with his techno project and that being released abroad than we have necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, there's but instead of being frustrated about it, instead of being, like, I used to get upset and angry about it, or both of us, we just turned our lens and said, well, let's create our own world. Like, if that world isn't there, well, fuck that shit. Like, it's racist, there's all bunch of crap happening. The fact that even urban music in this country, or black music in this country, isn't at a place where there should be superstars other than a couple of people. Like, it's a real problem. The fact that you've got, like, reggae shows that are massive, or Punjabi shows that sell out, or like Bhangra shows that sell out, and there's no white media or media representation that looks at this stuff as a problem. But instead of always complaining about it, let's create our own world. And we did that with our space. And now it's just about looking for, like, an independent label abroad that can help push us. Because I think any band that's actually really good, if they get a little bit exposure, there's an audience for them. I don't know if, like, pushing our own music to the extent of how you're supposed to push music, like with social media and Twitter, everything, it's a bit overwhelming. For me personally, it's too much. So I have to re-engage and relearn that shit, but that's a difficulty, is to trying to figure out, because things have changed in like 15 years. We dropped off a CD at CKLN, and everyone played it. We're like, wicked.